Isaiah 53:5. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that made us whole. And with his stripes we are healed. The teaching is a very in-depth reflection of the suffering that Jesus the Christ endured for us to open the gates of heaven for his people.
So, Holy Week, Good Friday. I remember, when I would drive around, when I had my business and I would drive around, and I remember on Good Friday, lots of times on certain days I would try to listen to James Dobson, Dr. Dobson, Focus on the Family. I was always looking for ideas on how to raise the kids. And they had good ideas. I mean, Dr. Dobson always would have some kind of idea of something that I probably needed as a dad or as a husband to apply into my life. But I remember just happening to flip in the channel on. It was a Good Friday. And he talked about this article. He said 1986, this article comes out, written by a couple of doctors, about how Jesus actually died. Now, I did a lot of research in the last 2 weeks on this, and it's amazing the amount of articles that have been written by pathologists, by morticians, by, forensic scientists, doctors. There's all kind of, all of them trying to tell you, how did Jesus actually die? Just from what we know in the Bible and this and that. And again, but all of them refer back to this article in 1986. All of them do. And again, these people did a lot of research. It's important to understand what Jesus went through. Okay? If you're going to find the power of the cross, like we just prayed, you got to understand. Most of us, I'll never forget, right after I was ordained, I had done a homily and I talked about the power of the cross. This woman came up to me. Well, I'll tell you, why don't you talk about the resurrection? I said, well, and she starts yelling at me and screaming at me. And I'm thinking, whoa, where's all that anger come from? And I said, you can't have the resurrection without the cross. So many of us don't even want to talk about the cross. And we sort of disconnect from anything to do with pain or suffering. We try to pull back away, or we try to numb it in certain ways. It could be with, getting busy doing something else. It could be alcohol or drugs or something else. Just, I can't handle it. It's just too overwhelming. When I was, I was in formation for 5 years. I got ordained in 1989. But in 1988, my life changed. I was trying to quit the diaconate. I was trying to come up with any reason I could. Raising little kids and in your early 30s, and then taking all these classes, and then trying to run a business where I'm working probably 120 to 180 hours a week. And I'm not exaggerating. She'll tell you that. And again, that's my wife. And again, it was overwhelming. And I just wanted to quit the diaconate. But yet every time I would try to quit, the Lord would put something in front of me to make it easier again. And so I had gone to the spiritual formation day at Mother Cabrini Shrine all day. I was there. And then when I came home, my life changed. I met my bride. She met me at the door. She had just gotten a phone call. And she's 7 months pregnant with our youngest. And she said, David and the boys are dead. I said, what? What are you talking about, David? Now, that'd be her brother and two of the kids, the 3-month-old and the 6-year-old. I said, what? What are you talking about? They're dead. And I'll never forget that look on my wife's face. Here I have this my bride who's pregnant, and it's like overwhelming what was being thrown at us, the suffering. And again, so what had happened is they went to bed on Thursday, and they lived back in Michigan, and they thought, they had the flu. And so my brother-in-law had many companies come out to check the furnace over those 3 months before that time. And it was below zero weather in Michigan. They lived up near Flint. And it was carbon monoxide. They went to bed on Thursday. My sister-in-law woke up on Sunday, found the 3-month-old dead in her arms, found the 6-year-old dead in the hallway. Both girls survived. The 9-year-old girl and my sister-in-law survived. And my brother-in-law, they found him downstairs. It's like this. You hear this stuff, but it never happens to you. Well, it happened to us. I'll never forget. Then the family asked me to do the eulogy, and I've never done a eulogy. And again, you're going to be a deacon, and it was like overwhelming. But I'll never forget. It was like a spiral staircase on a pulpit that was raised at this church. And I remember coming up on it, and as I went up, all of a sudden I felt this like warmth come over me. And it was like this oil being poured over me. Not physically, it wasn't like anything physically, but I just felt it. And then I heard this voice. Today, you are a priest in the eyes of Melchizedek. You are ordained today in my eyes. No, that's not the Catholic Church's eyes. That was just something, a spiritual experience I had. So don't think I'm trying to compare and take authority of a bishop or nothing. That's not what I'm trying to do. Just share an experience with you. I got to the top of that pulpit, and I'll never forget that little casket this way. Then a little bit bigger one, the 6-year-old. And then the little bit bigger one. And I'm standing there, looking out. And I look right into the eyes of my sister-in-law, Julie. I could see the pain. I saw Jennifer, her daughter, the 9-year-old. I could see the pain. I looked at my father-in-law's face. I'll never forget that look, and he would always say, my kids aren't supposed to die before me. They're not supposed to die before me. And then the look into my mother-in-law's face and all the other people there, the pain, the suffering, I just started to sob. I want to get you connected to what happened on Good Friday. So when you pray, just how I showed you how to pray, this is the Salvific prayer. There's many of them back there. Take as many as you want. And again, so you'll see back there on the table where the faith box is, there's the holy card with the cross. You can grab whatever you want, okay? But that teaches you how to do what I just taught. All right? Saint Dominic would pray for hours in front of the cross. I studied this after I got ordained. One of the things toward my last year of formation after this happened, I went out and brought this huge picture of Jesus in the garden, just praying on a rock and just praying. Remember, he's sweating blood. He's sweating blood. And again, so this man went through a lot, emotionally and physically. It's just overwhelming to what, I mean, these Romans they had perfected this. They perfected how to kill people and how to do it just enough where they could watch them suffer, because they wanted all the people to watch. As that person was hung on the cross, they wanted you to watch, so you won't get out of line then, will you? You won't get out of line, will you? Because you don't want that happening to you. And that's That's why they did this, and that's why they perfected this. But you need to really, if you're going to really do that Salvific prayer, you need to understand what Jesus went through. And don't pull back and say, well, you know, I'll focus more on the resurrection. Yeah, we want to focus on the empty tomb because we know we have access to heaven now. That's true. But it all begins here. So what I began to do was I'd focus and meditate on that picture in the garden. That's where it began with me. And then I would start to do the Stations of the Cross at home in front of it. And I start to begin to understand what Jesus really went through on that day. And then I started reading the saints, like Catherine of Siena, like John of the Cross, Dominic, St. Teresa of Avila. St. Teresa of Avila in her writings writes clearly, I was bored to death as a nun. We just kept doing every 2 hours or whatever it was, it was Liturgy of the Hours. And there's nothing wrong with Liturgy of the Hours, okay? It's a beautiful prayer, okay? But she said she was bored. But then one day, she's at the church, and they bring this really bloody crucifix. I mean, really bloody. This is a nice looking one, okay? And again, nice, it's carved out of wood, and it's real nice. But it was really bloody, and she just fell to her knees in front of it for hours and begin to meditate on the wounds of Jesus and what he had done. And then all her life changed after that. You know, when you look at the field of psychology, John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila are talked about all the time. They were doing psychology things long before there was a field of psychology, 500 years before. And so something happened on that day to St. Teresa of Avila. Something moved in her heart. It was no longer a relationship from here. This moved her to here. And she began to realize. Just watch the movie The Passion. Oh, it's a little bit too much for me right now. I don't want to go. No, it's not a bad thing to watch. He probably suffered 100 times greater than what's in that movie. Oh, come on. I don't know if you know what Jim Caviezel, when he was on the cross, something you go down like this, and most of the people on the cross actually dislocate their shoulders. Jim Caviezel actually had that happen to him. Now, he's the one who played Jesus. So, the Romans were so good at this stuff. Let's go to a couple scriptures here. Isaiah 53:5. So this is the Old Testament, right? But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that made us whole. And with his stripes we are healed. It didn't say, maybe sometimes. It says, with his stripes, we are healed. Now, go to 1 Peter. See what Peter says. 2:24. He says, by his wounds, you have been healed. Says that in the Word. I would pay attention. Those are great scriptures to put on like a 3x5 card. Put it in your mirror in your bathroom. Put it in the car. Put it in your purse. And so you can go back to it and say, oh, no. This is what my God did for me. Meditate on that cross. So after that, I began to spend hours after studying the saints and the power they found in meditating on the cross. I began to meditate on the cross after I'd been ordained in my early diaconate. And I would spend hours just meditating on one wound and on how much he must have suffered on that one wound. I'm going to quickly go over that with you, okay? So remember, the cross, like Pope Benedict says, is the doorway of faith back into relationship with God. The Father sends the Son, It will never, from the worldly standpoint, it will never make any sense, this. It won't. Come on. This doesn't make sense. Not from the world, but from heaven. The Father knew the only way to open things back up again, to get people back into relationship. I sent my prophets, and you didn't listen. She's like looking like at me like, yeah. And again, so they wouldn't listen to the prophets. And again, they didn't listen. They didn't understand the power of relationship with God. Out of that comes healing and deliverance. That's what this ministry is centered on, is how to do that. You got the Last Supper. He gives us the Eucharist. The other thing, don't forget, in John, he gives us the washing of the feet. So that's why you'll see on Holy Thursday, you'll see them wash the feet. Because that's forgiveness. Is there someone in your life that you need to forgive? Is there something that you're holding on? The little boy, the little girl, whatever, that they've held on for your life. So Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives and he prays. He actually prays for the cup to be removed. Not that my will be done, but thy will be done. Sort of sounds like the Our Father, doesn't it? Thy will be done. But then what's the next line with the Our Father? On earth as it is in heaven. Oh, just like in Matthew, Jesus is always saying, the kingdom of heaven is, you have access now through the power of this cross back into heaven now. You have access into relationship now. And that's what the Father wants. So, in Luke 22:44 it says, and being in agony, he prayed earnestly. This is in the garden now. And sweat became like drops of blood falling upon the ground. Hemohydrosis is called. So you got blood vessels around your sweat glands, okay? Blood vessels around your sweat glands. They're not that big. They're just little tiny things. And again, and so when there's stress in your life, now they've seen this happen to like people on death row or people going through torture and things like that, where they'll begin to sweat blood. Sometimes the blood will come out of their eyes. Sometimes it'll come through their skin. That's hemohydrosis. And again, so this happened to Jesus, and it's usually some deep emotional stress. And usually it's tied to thinking about death. That's usually what it's tied to. So the skin becomes very fragile and very tender, okay, at that time. Remember, so there was some blood loss, and there's some volume, some sweat loss too. So he was probably a little bit dehydrated. And when that kind of stuff happens, you get muscle cramps. It was probably, that time of year, they sort of zoned it in. It was probably around April 7th, okay, when Good Friday was, okay? Around April 7th is what the experts supposedly say. And again, I'm not sure how they came up with that date, but that's the date they say. So these droplets of blood are coming out. Your skin is tender. And then at that time of year, the temperature at night like that, so this is around midnight. It would have been somewhere in the 40s, mid-40s, somewhere around that. He's probably cold also. So you're chilled. Your body is tender. You're sweating blood. Just think of what the stress that was on him that night. Now, then Judas comes and does the kiss thing and all that, and but then he goes from Annas, which is the father-in-law of oh my gosh, Caiaphas. Thank you, Caiaphas, father-in-law of Caiaphas, goes there first, then goes to Caiaphas. Okay, and that's when they blindfold him, and they spit at him, and they begin to punch. They punch him. I mean, I don't know if you've been punched in the face. He can't see it coming. He doesn't even know who's punching him. Who is it that punched you? And again, you have this, you don't even know what's going on. And so he was beaten, right there in that situation, in the face. And then they said, he's a blasphemer. He's a blasphemer. So then they go in a trial before the Sanhedrin. And again, and they convict him of being a blasphemer. Then they take him before Pilate. They know that saying blasphemer isn't going to put him to death. Pilate's not going to put him to death. So that's where they came up with the thing. He says he's the king of the Jews, and he's against the Roman Empire. And again, so he's somebody you better be watching out for, because he's going to try to take over. And so, but yet Pilate says there's no charges. He sends him to Herod. So you got all these places he went. It's probably about 2.5 miles of walking once he's been arrested. And again, so Herod, he just wants a show from Jesus. Hey, do a miracle for me, will you? Come on, can you do it? Can you do a miracle? And he just wants a show. And he gives him no charges. He sends him back to Pilate. Pilate says, okay, and I'll just have him flogged and release him. And then no, and then you know how it goes, Barabbas, and they release Barabbas, and you know the story there. And then he gets the death sentence. So he's under great emotional stress because his closest friends have abandoned him. Can you imagine these guys? I'm not going back to see Mom. That would sort of hurt, wouldn't it? But you got these great guys here, all three of them. You can tell by the look in their face, the way they look at you. Boy, they love their mama. And again, and she's something special. And again, so the first thing he would have had, again, they would probably beat him again some more and punched him around and stuff like that. But then they scourged him, okay? And you got to remember, there was usually 4 to 6 leather, could be braided, and inside in those leather straps, it would be like a sinker, okay, like a hunks of metal that look like a fish sinker. Those would be on there. Now, can you imagine when they hit the body? The body's already tender, right? Just from the sweat and blood. All right, the body's already tender. So I mean, it's meant to bruise you. It would have been a really bad bruise because of where Jesus' body was already at. So then there was pieces of glass and pieces of sharp metal in there. And so what would happen is, just like you saw in the movie The Passion, if you saw it, again, lots of times there was, they would hang the guy up. There'd be a post here and hang him up here. They would not turn him this way and whip him because, and people that they did do that to, these guys are executioners. These guys are trained Roman soldiers to make pain. And they knew just when to pull back because they didn't want to kill him. They wanted him to suffer more on the cross. I mean, they knew exactly how far to take it. But if they did turn you around, there's writings where it would pull things open. Their inside guts would just fall out. And again, that's why they usually had them up against the post here, and then there's one guy on one side, one on the other, and these are probably big, beefy guys. And they would whip. They would say it's probably whipped at between 100 to 200 miles an hour, and then it would stick to the person's body, and they'd pull it, and it would just rip the skin. And again, so how many lashes did he get? We're not sure, but they were meant to get somebody close to death. So he suffered greatly during that time. So when you see the whip marks and you say, I don't know, I think for my cancer, that whip mark back here or this mark here or whatever, and they would whip you all the way from your ankles to your And again, sometimes it would come back around and pull and so that's how they did it. And again, it was meant to cause severe pain. So there was obviously a lot of bleeding with this. He probably lost a lot of blood. He was probably after he got scourged, was in some kind of pre-shock condition. So, when this kind of stuff happens, I mean, his body is going to your. You hear me talk about sympathetics and parasympathetics. Sympathetics is when your body is in this fear mode, it's stress mode. So it releases things on your body, just so that it can maintain your core, and the other organs begin to shut down. Kidneys, other things, they begin to do that, and so he's probably in that pre-shock thing right there. He's probably serious, if not in a critical condition. So, at that time. Now, they would strap the cross. They would tie a beam. He probably did not carry this whole thing. And as a matter of fact, these kind of crosses, this is probably not how it looked. It probably did not have this top part on it. So they would carry this beam here. And that whole wooden cross like that would weigh about 300 pounds. Who can carry that? But the cross beam would weigh somewhere between 80 and 110 pounds. And they'd strap it. And again, so now your arms are like this. So if you're already weak, if you fall, where are you falling? Face down. And again, so his face has already been beaten. And now he's falling down, scraping his knees more. Now, feel that. Pretty smooth, right? But that's not how the cross would be. These crosses were used over and over and over again. Think of a piece of like cedar, something like that, when you see how rough it is. And again, so when that got launched onto your body like that and your arms are tied, you're getting all kinds of slivers, and it's moving, and it's reopening all those whip marks. It's very painful, super painful. And again, with every step, you're like, oh, ooh, ooh, ooh. And again, and it's hard enough. So Jesus had, Simon of Cyrene did help carry his cross. He was just too weak at that time. So that tells us a lot of information, how weak he was. The scourging, those guys were masters at it. They knew exactly. So what happened next was, again, this is actually from Israel, but there's about 3 different sets of thorn bushes that they think that might have been. This is one of them. It probably was not made like a crown like this. When you look at the Shroud of Turin, they just probably cut something, cut something off of it could have been like this, but they would wrap it around. It was on top of his head. It was around his head, and again, they didn't sit there and say, "Oh, that's not too tight, is it?" They didn't. No, they want to inflict pain, so they're pulling it and then they're just wrapping it. They probably had gloves on because this is sharp. This could hurt. And again, so it probably covered the whole top of the head. And if you look at the Shroud of Turin, that's what it shows, that there was thorns on top of the Shroud of Turin. Whether or not you believe that's authentic or not, I do, but I'm not telling you have to. So we talked about carrying a cross. The next thing, let's talk about the nails. This is sort of like a replica of a Roman nail. Okay? It was probably placed in here, is what they said, because this whole part was called the hand. In that time of 2,000 years ago, the Romans would call all that the hand. Today we would call that the wrist, and this is the hand. And again, so one of the forensic scientists, he took cadaver and he hung it, and because he wanted to see, because if you nail it in the palm, it's just going to rip through. But what he said, he goes, there's bones down here. So what he did is he put it on an angle like this and nailed it. And the person could stay there. So he said they may have nailed it like that, okay, on an angle. And again, or it might have been nailed here. Either way, there's tremendous There's nerves here. The blood vessels would be on the outside, so you could hit here, and you wouldn't get tremendous bleeding, wouldn't bleed to death or nothing. And again, but every time they moved, tremendous pain, like fire going up and down your arms. With the ankles, with the feet, so they have things when they've looked at cadavers, and sometimes the feet were like this, okay, together like that. And most art things, you see them like this. It could have been either way. There was usually a block of wood down there, and again, which they would mount it on. But sometimes they would actually put it through the side of the ankle, the spike, and not through the top like you see. And again, so sometimes it's pointing through the side of the ankle, and they'd put it at an angle like that. And a lot of them show it like that. There was also, in the time of Jesus, there was also a lot of people, they would put like a little block right there at their buttocks. You don't usually see that in any crucifix things, or they only talk about that. But they found those there, and they would put a little block there so they could actually sit. But then they had to move up, again, same type of a thing. But again, so that's another thing. Another thing. So every time you took a breath, again, you're like this, and you're hanging there. It pulls out on your intercostal rib cage, okay? It makes you inhale, like the feeling like you're going to inhale. So you can get air, and your diaphragm can continue to move, okay? Can move a little bit, and you can get air in, but I can't exhale. The only way I can exhale is I got to push up. Fiery pain in my legs, and every time this moves, I'm also opening up wounds in the back off that rough cross. Tremendous pain there, and then fiery down both arms, and then I can exhale. And then I fall back down again. And again, tremendous pain. These guys were masters at having people die slowly. And again, so remember his words as he takes everything to the cross. There's 7 last words of Jesus. One of the ones I always say, do you remember when I was praying over you the one time? And then the Lord spoke to me. You had the headaches and all that stuff. And then I was praying over you, and I said, I keep hearing it over and over again. It is finished. I said, I think the Lord wants me to tell you that. It's finished. So one of the words he speaks from here, Tammy, it is finished. It is finished. It is finished. Whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, we got to learn how to take those words into here, not here, here. This cross is all about a heart-to-heart relationship and learning how to have a relationship with the Lord. And this is where healing begins, right here. And when he says it's finished, I think he means it. Okay? All right. So the other thing that he gets, because he dies on the cross, is, the spear. And so they probably came, and again, it hits on the right side. And again, remember, most of the things that you see on the movies has this cross way up high in the air. Probably was not like that. Especially in Israel. There's not that many wood. There's not that much wood. So most crosses were probably 5 or 6 feet tall. Okay? They weren't this thing real tall. Now, occasionally, that could have happened, but that probably wasn't like that in 2,000 years ago. It was probably more of a 6-foot cross. And again, so he dies, and the soldier takes the spear, and I love the movie The Passion. I love that scene. And again, and then how he falls to the ground afterwards, and that water and blood from Jesus' side comes and covers. I'm not going to get into how all these doctors think that maybe he died. That's irrelevant. He was dead. I want you to get into, how did he suffer for you? So you can open up your heart. When I told you the story about my brother-in-law and nephews dying, that opened up probably stories within you. Your story. You know people who you've been close to, who have passed. And again, you guys know Kathleen's son. Well, you probably didn't know him then, but I mean, his son, Kathleen's son who died, and where a car hit him on a bike when he was 12. And again, so for all of us, there's some kind of compassion. I want you to learn how to get to it here. I want you to be able to look at the cross from here, so it never becomes the same again. I don't want you to pull back away and say, it's just too overwhelming to do that. I will tell you what, there's great power in the cross. When you learn how to go there, and you could spend hours on it. You say, I don't have that kind of time. Well, I will tell you what, when you could just focus on that and focus on the power of what he has done so that we have access back into heaven, then you can learn how to pray like that Salvific prayer. And, but matter of fact, that woman, I don't think I told you, but she was totally healed. Totally healed. Now, I speak that into you. I want you to receive that. Dwayne, you heard him talk. Oh, was that Dwayne I heard? Or was it named Tammy? Whose name? Anyway, so what I want you to learn how to do is when you do pray and you do the Salvific prayer, I want you to learn how to really, you should be moved when you're meditating on the cross to almost where there's tears welling up in your eyes. It's okay. It's okay to cry. All right? I mean, that's the best story we have right here. So when you can move to that spot, I'm telling you, that's when things begin to happen with you emotionally, physically, and spiritually. That's how you get breakthrough with your prayer. This is what I'm teaching you here is powerful stuff. Good Friday is not meant for one day a year. Good Friday leads us to an empty tomb. He's alive. But you got to begin here. You got to know what he went through for you. And when you can get to that compassion, Jesus opens up his heart with compassion and empathy. And when he does it, heaven manifests. So when you open up your heart with compassion and empathy, heaven can manifest in your life also. In breakthroughs with amazing things. I don't care what the doctors say or anything like that. I know the primary care doctor, Jesus Christ. I know what he can do. I've seen it. And I drop in awe like, wow, he did that? Did I just see that? I had one guy come, and the one arm, let's see, I think it was this one, because of a shoulder injury, this arm went out this far. It was this different. I had a team pray over his shoulder, and then I commanded that arm to grow, and guess what happened? The arm grew. And I was like, wow. But that's what Jesus can do, that kind of stuff. I've seen legs grow. I've seen, it's like, wow. I wasn't there, but I have a friend of mine who was there when at the Rock Church, an eyeball grew back in this guy's head. It had been gone since he was a child from an accident. So we're going to wrap it up here. What I want you to do is I also have these. So I have two different boxes here. I'm going to have, maybe you guys can go around. So there's two different size nails here. What I want you to do is just grab one. If you want a taller one, that's fine. Want a smaller one, that's fine. But put it in your pocket, okay? And carry it with you, not just for Good Friday. Carry it with you. Feel the sharpness. Feel how it feels. And again, and feel it feels on you. And again, and then when you meditate on those nails, hold that in your hand. And look at that cross. And feel this. How many times have I nailed Jesus to the cross with what I've done? Think about that.
Thank you for watching our video. Please pray for our ministry. If you feel moved to donate, please go to our website intercessorsofthetrinity.org. Look for the donate button or mailing address. If you like the video, please hit the like button, and if you want to know when a new video is available, please subscribe to our channel. This helps us to help spread the good news of what God is doing in our lives.